Translator, Dark Angel, Editor, Kurisu. In his former life, Linghan had once roamed through countless ancient ruins and long-buried relic grounds, and within some of those places there existed what was known as the Light of God. Above Heaven Tier stood Shattering Void Tier, and it was said that those who cultivated Shattering Void Tier to completion could cleave the void itself and truly ascend as gods. Thus, the restrictions left behind by supreme experts of Shattering Void Tier were also called the Light of God. In his previous life, because he sought methods to break through into Shattering Void Tier, Linghan had practically turned over every ancient site he could find. As a result, he had seen this so-called Light of God more times than he could count. A great portion of the rumours could not be trusted. According to his own deductions, the Light of God should not have been laid down by Shattering Void Tier experts at all, but rather the lingering divine radiance that seeped out from their remains after death. Thinking to this point, Linghan's thoughts could not help but twist sharply. Could it be that, back then, a formidable Shattering Void Tier expert had risen, and for some reason became the target of Jiang Yuefeng and the others joining hands against him? If a Shattering Void Tier Supreme displayed his might, then it would not be strange at all for so many Heaven Tier experts to fall in battle against such an opponent. Of course, there was another possibility, that many Heaven Tier experts had discovered the tomb of a Shattering Void Tier Supreme to fight over the relics and treasures left behind. They had become entangled in a grand battle royale. The result was countless injuries and deaths and the shattering of their spiritual tools. Weighing these two possibilities, Linghan was more willing to believe the former. "Young friend, is there any way to break this restriction?" Zhao Shui asked. "There is!" Linghan nodded. If it were any other restriction, he truly would have had no clue, but this was the Light of God. In his former life, he had broken it who knew how many times. This had nothing to do with cultivation level. What was needed were the necessary ingredients. What? Zhao Wuxie and the others gasped in unison. Zhao Wuxie had only asked in passing and had not placed any hopes on Linghan being able to break it. He had never imagined Linghan would answer so unexpectedly. Is that true? Hearing Linghan's reply, the others instead felt a heavy doubt rise within them. After all, Linghan was only an element-gathering tier, far too weak in their eyes. "You may choose not to believe me, but if you want me to break this seal, I need a few ingredients. If you can get me these ingredients, then I will immediately be able to break this seal," Linghan stated. "Please tell us, young friend, what ingredients do you require?" Zhao Wuxie asked. Linghan opened his mouth and calmly recited the names of an enormous list of ingredients. At those names, Zhao Wuxie and the others turned green in the face, and some even looked as though flames were about to burst from their mouths. This was practically demanding they spend their entire family fortunes. "Whenever you can gather all these ingredients, then I'll be able to unseal this barrier. If you have yet to gather these ingredients, then please do not come to disturb me." Linghan flung out these words, then led the two girls back the way they had come, leaving behind the 10-plus old men to stare at one another in wavering indecision. "Do you all think the words of this brat can be believed?" Zhao Wuxie asked, breaking the heavy silence. Since he is Grandmaster Wu's representative, then he should not have spoken without thinking. "But this brat is only 16 or 17 years old. Does he truly have such ability? It may be true that he is indeed an extraordinary genius, otherwise he could not have become Grandmaster Wu's representative. All of you need not trouble yourselves with these worries. This brat demands so many priceless ingredients. This is already not something we can decide on our own. We should immediately send messenger birds back to the Imperial City to inform our respective clan elders." "That's true." They all nodded in agreement, and upon returning, each of them immediately released messenger birds to contact the Imperial City. Messenger birds were in truth a kind of demonic beast that, after training, could be used to carry messages. Their flight was astonishingly swift, and they could travel a few thousand miles within a single day. Thus, by the next day, all of them received replies, telling them to agree to Linghan's request, and that all the clans would send spiritual pedestal tier experts to personally deliver the ingredients. After all, these ingredients were simply far too valuable. Most likely, even half the national treasury would be emptied by such an expense. Only 4 days later, several high-ranking figures of spiritual pedestal tier arrived, bringing along the ingredients Ling Han had demanded. "Little fellow, you're so young, yet you know quite a lot." A kindly, gentle-looking old man stepped into Ling Han's tent and smiled at him serenely, as if gazing upon his own grandson. Yet Liu Yutong revealed a fearful expression. This old man was an elder of the Li clan named Li Zhang, an authentic spiritual pedestal tier expert, but one must not be fooled by his gentle face. In truth, this old man was vicious and merciless, bearing a fearsome reputation within the imperial city from the number of people who had died by his hands. In his youth, who knew how much blood had stained those hands? Now that he was older, he had spent most of his time striving to break through to flower blossom tier, which allowed his bloody reputation to gradually fade. Only those of the older generation still knew of this god of death. Ling Han laughed and said, "I like learning many different things, so I have a little knowledge across many fields." The light of God was not something that could be broken by brute force. Even Heaven Tier Suprema could do nothing against it. Thus, Ling Han had tried countless methods before finally deriving a technique that could open a door within the light of God. Hehe, it truly is good to be young, with so much time on your hands. You can learn whatever you please, unlike me. I already have half a foot in the coffin when I close my eyes to sleep tonight. I don't even know whether I'll be able to open them tomorrow morning, Li Zhangye said with a laugh. Yet that laughter carried a chilling edge, raising goosebumps across the skin of Liu Yutong and Li Xichan. Ling Han did not mind in the slightest. In his former life, he had been a Heaven Tier Supreme. Would he be frightened by a mere spiritual pedestal tier martial artist? That would be a joke. "Please return, Elder. I need to make preparations. In about a day, I will be done and ready to break that barrier," Ling Han said. Li Zhangye could not help but be surprised. This brat actually dared to send him away? Yet since he now had a request of the other party, he did not dare refuse. He could only turn and leave the tent. "Who that old ghost is finally gone!" Ling Han let out a breath of relief, then swiftly selected several precious medicinal ingredients from the vast pile and immediately began concocting alchemical pills. This, Liu Yutong and Li Xichan were stunned into numbness when they saw it. It seemed Ling Han had used his position to achieve his own ends, deliberately listing many unnecessary ingredients in order to refine pills for his personal use. To actually dare to swindle the Rain Country imperial family and the 8 great clans, Ling Han truly had to be the only one. That was only natural. To ask him, the Alchemy Emperor, to do something for them, how could they not offer payment equal in value to their request? Ling Han worked at full power and did not rest for the entire day and night, continuously refining a large number of alchemical pills. When dawn arrived the next day, he snickered, tossed a pill bottle each to Liu Yutong and Li Xichan and said, "This is your share of benefits and payment for you keeping quiet." During the previous day, the two girls had both acted as his assistants, doing chores such as sorting and separating medicinal ingredients. Otherwise, Ling Han truly could not have finished refining so many pills. 4 transformations pill, ancient clear pill. Li Xichan's beautiful eyes swept over the pill bottles and she immediately gasped in shock. Astonishment was written clearly across her pretty face. There actually exists someone in this world who can concoct these pills. What 4 transformations pill, ancient clear pill? Liu Yutong knew little about alchemy, so her face was filled with confusion. They're both spiritual medicines that can help raise one's cultivation level, and their effects are 10 times better than similar pills available now. But the 4 transformations pill is for gushing spring tier, while the ancient clear pill should be used in element gathering tier. Li Xichan explained. At this, Liu Yutong's expression changed completely, 10 times the effect. What kind of concept was that? She would be able to reach the 9th layer of gushing spring tier within a year and begin breaking through into spiritual ocean tier. Just imagining herself only 20 years old yet already stepping into spiritual ocean tier, she was nearly about to faint. Ling Han laughed. Pills refined by others indeed might have 10 times the usual effect, but the pills he refined were at the very least worth 13 stars and carried at least 30% additional effect on top of that tenfold increase. Yet he would not mention it, lest he scare these two girls to death. Dark Angel, Kurisu. To do good without ever craving a return, such a thing had never matched Linghan's temperament. Since they wanted him to pry open the light of God, how could he not seize this chance to wrest some benefits for himself? Put differently, they were asking an ultimate heaven-tier powerhouse to lift a finger for them, yet offering only this scrap of payment. He was already being generous by agreeing. "Let's go. We can't keep them waiting too long. It would be discourteous," he said. The two girls immediately rolled their eyes at him. The truth was plain. He had spent the whole day and night brewing alchemical medicines, not making any preparations at all. He was clearly the one who had made them wait pointlessly for an entire day, yet he still had the face to say such words. Shameless, truly shameless. The three of them stepped out of their tent. Those old monsters of spiritual pedestal tier had waited for a long time, yet old monsters were old monsters. Not the slightest trace of impatience showed on their faces. On the contrary, every one of them wore a smile. "All of them are old foxes, scheming, shrewd, and slippery." Linghan sneered inwardly, then opened his mouth and said, "I've caused all you seniors to wait far too long. Many apologies." "Young friend, you've worked hard," those spiritual pedestal tier old monsters all replied with smiles. "Then let's set out." Linghan cut straight to the matter. He had already taken the benefits he wanted, and he too wished to quickly reach the underground river's source and see what exactly had occurred there. All the old monsters were somewhat surprised because Linghan was acting far too calmly. They were all spiritual pedestal tier, the strongest figures in all Rain Country. If any one of them stomped a foot, mountains could crack and rivers could shift their courses. And now they were gathered in one place, yet Linghan did not so much as blink at their presence. How could they not be curious about the reason behind his composure? Yet they did not know one thing. Compared to the might Linghan had possessed in his past life, what did mere spiritual pedestal tier amount to? Pay. They wouldn't even qualify to guard his door. The group once more returned to the place where they had halted before, and once again the light of God stood right before them. Linghan began arranging the ingredients. One after another, the materials were placed smoothly by his hands, his movements so swift they became a blur in the eyes of the others. Yet within that speed there was an elegance, a beauty in motion that made the spectators unconsciously sink into watching him. "Yee, I actually seem to feel a kind of rhythmic beauty from this brat's movements." "So you feel it too? This brat is truly strange, like every move he makes corresponds with the Tao of nature. How can there be such a person?" Could it be? The ancient records speak of a kind of person born suited to the Tao. For such a person, comprehending the secrets of martial arts is as easy as drinking water. Natural martial body. The eyes of all the old monsters brightened. If Linghan truly was a natural martial body, then he was unquestionably a priceless treasure. So long as one observed his movements day after day, one could rapidly gain insights into martial arts. Linghan could be regarded as a living spiritual treasure of the martial path. This brat had gained Wu Songlin's acknowledgement, so they couldn't truly seize him by force. But what about marriage? If they could make him marry into their clan, then it would be perfectly legitimate for him to stay within their clan residence, and even Wu Songlin would have nothing to say against it. Linghan had no idea that, in that instant, he had become prey everyone wished to snatch. His entire focus rested on the ingredients in his hands, and as he flung them out one after another, he actually tore open a hole within the light of God, creating an opening just wide enough for a single person to pass through. He really succeeded. The old monsters were all struck dumb over these past few days. They had each tried on their own, yet the might of the light of God was not something they could overcome. All they could do was stare at it blankly. Never had they imagined Linghan would truly succeed. This naturally made their desire to have him marry into their clans burn even hotter. One of the old monsters, an impatient sort, was just about to step through the opening at once when Ling Han stretched out an arm to block him and said, "Wait! Brat, what are you trying to do?" This old monster was a spiritual pedestal tier powerhouse of the Qiang clan, among the 8 great clans. Impatient by nature and foul-tempered besides, he glared at Ling Han and a heavy pressure immediately spilled out from his body. Ling Han smiled calmly, withdrew his arm and said, "If you want to die, I won't stop you. Please, go right ahead." Hearing these words, the Qiang clan old monster did not dare act recklessly and asked, "Isn't the restriction already broken?" "This can only be called a minor success. The current opening can allow an ordinary person to enter, but body refining tier will suffer rejection from the restriction. The stronger your cultivation, the more powerful the rejection you will feel. If you force your way through, that is the same as seeking your own death," Ling Han said. So that was the truth. "Stupid brat, why didn't you speak earlier about such a huge matter? You almost got me killed," the Qiang clan old monster said awkwardly, clearly embarrassed. Ling Han smiled and said, "Do you not see that I still have many ingredients I haven't used? Wouldn't this be embezzlement on my part?" The old monsters all burst into hearty laughter, while Liu Yutong and Li Xichan sneered inwardly. This fellow's nerve was simply outrageous. He had already embezzled plenty. Ling Han continued his motions, tossing out ingredient after ingredient, making the opening steadier, firmer, and more robust. Now, body refining tier should be able to enter. Now, element gathering tier should be able to as well. Gushing spring tier. Ling Han suddenly stopped because every ingredient had been used. He let out a sigh and said, "My ability is limited, so I can only create an opening that allows, at most, gushing spring tier martial artists to enter." The others all stared blankly. The Stroningtor was gushing spring tier. Was this on purpose? That's right. Ling Han had done it deliberately. At first, he had intended the opening to be limited to only element gathering tier, but he felt that would be too obvious, so he raised the entry limit by 1 tier, but on the other hand, Rain Country's resources were limited. So even if he had no personal intent at all, the opening he could create would at most only allow spiritual ocean tier martial artists to enter. Only gushing spring tier? The old monsters all furrowed their brows. "How about this? Let us immediately send word back to the Imperial City and have the gushing spring tier martial artists of our clans come over at once," someone proposed. Beyond this opening might lie a great secret treasure. Who would not wish to seize it? "For these few days, we'll seal off this place first and allow no one to pass through," Li Zhangye said. "We should do that." All of them feared that someone else would enter first and snatch away whatever fated opportunity might be hidden beyond the opening, so they agreed to seal the area and wait for the various gushing spring tier geniuses of their respective clans to arrive, after which they would all enter together. "Little fellow, you have no objections, right?" Li Zhangye asked, smiling craftily. "Of course not," Ling Han replied with a smile. "However, you all had best make good use of your time. This opening can be maintained for, at most, 10 days. "Damn!" The old monsters all rolled their eyes. "Then why didn't you say so earlier?" If they had known, they could have gathered their clan geniuses sooner. But now everything was rushed, and they weren't sure how many they could actually bring in time. They all departed once more, and naturally, messenger birds flew off one after another, carrying news back toward the Imperial City. Ling Han sat within his tent, quietly cultivating. This time he had practically robbed the 8 great clans and the imperial family in one sweep, and had successfully refined various precious alchemical pills, enough for him to live comfortably for quite a while without worrying over money. "Robbery is truly fun," he thought, swallowing an alchemical pill. 4 days passed in the blink of an eye, and young men and women arrived without cease. These were all from the younger generation of the 8 great clans and the imperial family, either gushing spring tier or at the very least element gathering tier. Clearly, the old monsters suspected a secret treasure lay behind the restriction and hoped the youth of their own clans would obtain it. Thus, they naturally sent as many people as they could. On the 7th day, about 200 of the younger generation from the various clans had arrived. The old monsters also felt they could delay no longer, because only 3 days remained for them. "Set out!"